Welcome back, friends. Despite how small this channel is currently, I'm impressed by how engaged and motivated many of you are. I'm delighted that you've enjoyed my astral projection video, and I'm happy to announce that I have at least 4 more underway. In fact, this video should have been number 2 in the series, but I had a conversation with a friend recently that reminded me of something very important that I often take for granted, but most people apparently do not. Recently, a friend of mine told me,
I really miss Justin. For all his issues, he could always make me laugh. He made me feel empowered, like I was strong and competent. Now that he's gone, so is my strength and competence.
Now, when someone approaches me like this, there are certain translations that I do automatically in my head, usually without even being consciously aware of it. One of them is that I key in on the phrase, "he made me feel." Because now I know intrinsically that it is not possible within the laws of this universe for a person to psychically induce another person to feel a certain way. That's not to say that a person cannot sense how another person feels, that's a different thing. But for me to point my finger at a person and say sad, happy, envious, whatever, is not possible. So, where did her feelings of strength and competence come from? The only place they could have, from within herself. What the other person's presence did was not to make her feel that way. His presence gave her permission to stop suppressing the way she already felt about herself. He allowed her to let go of the self-doubts and criticisms that she allowed to stand in the way of her true feelings. All she had to do was give herself that same permission, and she could feel like that all the time. A similar case can be made for negative emotions too. Let's take another example.
I just can't stand living next to Sandra with her perfect body, big fake tits, that giant house, and lavish new Mercedes. She makes me feel like such a failure.
So here we have a case where our heroine, who has been voiced by my lovely girlfriend Natalie, who will probably make an appearance on camera one of these days, she believes that her neighbor Sandra bears some guilt for making her feel inadequate by comparison. However, it is not Sandra who is making any comparisons here. Unless she's overtly doing something to indicate that she's trying to elicit feelings of envy, in all likelihood she's just going about her life blissfully unaware of any of this. Now, of course, as many of you probably picked out immediately, the real issue is our heroine's materialism and ultimately ego. She is making the classic mistake of allowing herself to identify with material possessions, and thereby allowing herself to feel that she is in some way less of a person because she doesn't possess as high quality or as expensive of items as her neighbor. The solution here is to embrace minimalism and to try to find some more worthy target for your self-identification. It's also worth noting that this effect is not constrained only to one's feelings about themselves. It works the same way when those feelings are projected onto others. For example,
I can't stand my coworker. I just know he's out to get me. Here, look at this list of things he's done that has somehow negatively impacted me. That can't be coincidence. He's clearly a malicious and horrible monster.
now that little contrived example was written somewhat awkwardly to illustrate its own absurdity. The things he's done that have in some way negatively impacted me is intended to draw out the mental gymnastics that some people will go to in order to justify to themselves their belief in their coworker's malice. Of course, from the coworker's perspective, he's oblivious to all of this. He may be competent or he may be incompetent. We can't tell just from that little speech. But one thing he is unlikely to be is malicious, especially if you're peers. I mean, what would he stand to gain from it? While anything is possible and people can certainly act in irrational ways, it's more likely that he was just trying to do his job to the best of his ability and is unaware of the impact of his actions on you. Alternatively, if he has noticed that something that he's doing conflicts with something you are doing, then it's reasonable to assume that he would bring that up to his manager. Then it's entirely possible that his manager may have told him not to worry about it because, your job would be changing soon, or whatever lie they happen to think of. So the person carries on assuming that all this is as it should be. I mean, sure, that makes the manager rather malicious, but not the coworker. The point is, you don't know. So at this point, I can't help but be reminded of Hanlon's razor, right? Don't ascribe to malice that which can be adequately explained by incompetence, or stupidity if you prefer the original version. On the surface, that may sound like quite a pessimistic condemnation of society, but it's actually just a corollary of Occam's razor, which states that the simplest solution is usually the correct one. So as a parting comment, now imagine being in the position of having to console someone whose lover has recently died. Then they tell you that their ability to experience love has died with them. Well, it has if you want it to, but that's entirely in your hands to decide. You can also choose to give yourself permission to grow through that tragedy and love even more deeply as a result of it. And speaking of love, how many times have you heard someone say, "You can't help who you fall in love with"? Well, want to bet? In the end, it may not be all about you, but what you feel and how you react is entirely in your own hands to decide. You guys have a great rest of your day, and don't forget to like and subscribe.